Have you ever looked at some huge problem in the world and just felt completely overwhelmed? I mean, the whole idea of social change sounds so big, right? Like something only famous people in history books can pull off. But what if that's not the whole story? What if it actually starts way, way smaller? Maybe with just a single ripple. Today, we're going to dive into how those little ripples can turn into massive waves and what it really takes to create change that actually lasts.
To kick things off, let's just soak in this idea from Nelson Mandela. It's such a powerful reminder that this isn't about waiting for someone else to act. The power, he says, is right here with us. It's in our hands. And that really sets the perfect tone for what we're about to get into.
So this is what it all boils down to, isn't it? Can one single person with one idea actually make a dent in the universe? It's this huge question that feels both incredibly inspiring and, let's be honest, kind of terrifying. But I think you'll find the answer is a lot more hopeful than you might think.
All right, so let's start at square one. One person, one action. Every massive movement, every historical shift you can think of, it didn't start with a crowd. It started with a single individual doing something. That's the spark. That's what starts the whole ripple.
A really useful way to look at this is through the lens of what's called community psychology. And the cool thing about this field is that it's not just about sitting back and studying people. No, it's all about getting in there and actively changing the systems, the barriers that are holding people in their communities back from really thriving.
So when we use this word change, what are we really talking about? Well, at its absolute core, it's just the process of making something different than it was before. It's not some kind of magic. It's a process. And that process, every single time, kicks off with one initial action.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. It turns out that not all change is the same. There's a huge difference between just doing things a little differently and fundamentally changing the way we think about things. This is where we get into two very different kinds of change.
So first up, we've got what's called first-order change. Think of this as working within the existing rules. It's when you or I change what we're doing, but the system, the game we're all playing, stays exactly the same. It's a start, for sure, but it can only get you so far.
And then there's this, second-order change. This is the big one. This isn't about playing the game differently. It's about changing the entire game board. This is where you question the basic assumptions and completely reshape the structures that we all operate in. This is where real transformation happens.
This chart really lays it out perfectly. Look at how it describes first-order change. It's just an extension of the past. You're just tweaking what's already there. But second-order change, that's a break with the past. It's about a totally new way of seeing things. One is a minor adjustment, the other creates a whole new future.
All right, let's tackle a really common myth. We tend to think that some big event happens and then, poof, everyone just changes automatically. But that is absolutely not how it works. Change isn't a spectator sport. It doesn't just happen to us, it's an active process, and it requires a choice from each of us to actually participate.
So, if change is so important, why is it so incredibly hard sometimes? Why do even the best ideas run into a brick wall of resistance? Well, this brings us to a really powerful idea in psychology, the scarcity trap.
Basically, it boils down to this. When we feel like resources, whether it's money, services, you name it, are in short supply, our deep-seated instinct is to circle the wagons and protect our piece of the pie. We get scared of losing what we have, even if it means preventing others from getting what they need.
Let me tell you about a real-world example of this. In a place we'll just call town ABC, a group trying to help the homeless held a public meeting. They thought, hey, everyone will want to help, but they were wrong. Instead, citizen after citizen got up and argued against it. They were terrified that more services for the homeless would mean fewer mental health resources for their own kids. The scarcity trap slammed shut, and the whole meeting just fell apart, leaving the organizers completely baffled.
Okay, so we get it. We know the goal is that big, second-order change, and we know about the barriers, like the scarcity trap. So what do? Let's switch gears from the problems to the solutions. Let's look at the actual toolkit for making a difference.
Major change almost never happens when things are going great. It's usually sparked by some kind of pressure or need. Think of these as the triggers, things like dwindling resources, a major conflict in town, or maybe just a lot of people getting fed up with how things are. Figuring out that trigger is the first step, because that's the energy you can use to build a solution.
And once that change is triggered, what do you actually do? Well, check this out. This is the social change wheel.
And it's like a menu of strategies. It shows us that there isn't just one way to make a difference. It's everything from voting and lobbying to community organizing, protests, and even starting a social enterprise. There are so many tools in the toolkit.
This all leads us to one final, really important idea. We've seen the triggers, we've seen the tools, but does change just happen randomly, or can we actually steer it? Let's talk about the power of being intentional.
We can really break down social change into 3 main buckets. First, you've got spontaneous change. Think of a natural disaster. Nobody saw it coming. Then there's unplanned change, which is sort of a side effect of something else. But that third one, planned change, that's where we come in. That's where we look at a problem and deliberately step in to make things better.
So what does really effective planned change look like? Well, first, it's not some vague giant idea. It has a specific target. Second, its whole purpose is to make life tangibly better for people. And maybe the most important part, it's not something done to a community. The people who are most affected by the problem have a real role in creating the solution. It has to be done with them, not for them.
And so we end up right back where we started, but with a totally new perspective. Change isn't some magical, mysterious force, and it's definitely not just for the history books. We've seen that it's a process. It can be understood, it can be triggered, and most importantly, it can be designed. The tools are there, they're in our hands, which really just leaves one last question for all of us. What are we waiting for?